We've got more of the Snake Man. He's at least not abandoning us. You just wouldn't know it because nobody watches on Facebook Gaming. Okay, that's the last Facebook dig for today. Let's hop in because we've got one where he's going to be going up against Ingsoc and Altai. And the cool difference in matchups here, actually, typically whenever I'm watching Altai, Yawn, Snooze, Fiesta, because all we get is the English, the Chinese, occasionally a little bit of HRE, or if Wham is about, maybe you get your Mongols making an appearance. Someone we don't see very frequently is what Ingsoc has whipped out here. Going for the Roos. Roos is definitely an interesting pick here. There is arguably some value, and we've seen players use it very well, especially if the boar is in the center of the map, which in this situation is not for Ingsoc. But overall, not many people are actually practicing the Roos on Altai, and the reasoning is simple. In a competitive environment, it just doesn't make sense. What does that mean? Well, think about all the maps that you could actually pick in comp, right? If you're a pro-level player, if you're trying to be an aspiring pro, you need to kind of configure yourself around competitive play, certain map pools. Roos doesn't come out as a logical one for Altai. You know, there are more logical picks. Maybe you could argue whether they're stronger or not. I think they are definitely stronger. But also, they're less versatile, right? So, for example, the two leading civs, I'd say, you see so frequently on this map, has to be the English and the Chinese. English and Chinese are a lot less flexible when it comes to map pool than the Roos. The Roos can be picked more or less anywhere. They are kind of shooing your jack of all trades. And especially with the introduction of some custom maps where the Roos can be pretty brutal, it feels like a throwaway to use them on a map like Altai. Especially with these configurations where the boar maybe doesn't give you a desirable spawn, because I think some of the land-based choices for the Roos really rely upon boars being in decent locations. And also, you know, if you can get a water map alternatively, the fishing is just too damn good to pass up. But anyway, look at the openness. Ingsoc is, of course, quick on the blitz out to try and get as much bounty together as possible. On the other side, Viper has opted for the HRE, something a bit more atypical, I'd say, actually, on this map, because I'd say HRE is probably third or fourth in terms of frequency played here. It's a decent civ. The logic is that usually you can secure 2 relics pretty quickly. You've got a condensed funnel point to chase down, where you can actually stop your opponents from kind of like wide wrapping. And why that's beneficial is it's not about the cavalry spam as much as it used to be with the HR in this map. It was more about the men-at-arms and Langsnet potential, especially if you're thinking about a Burger Palace build, which is another thing that I think Altai enables. Usually you get these very tight spawns for the deer. Admittedly, in this situation, Viper lucked out. In fact, this is I feel a bit scammed for him. A forward spawn deer compared to a retracted deer spawn. And I think that deer for the Roos is even a little bit closer. Also means that Viper can't get high-value Archon placement. You see he's going to opt to go next to the berries, but a weird choice here actually being made by Viper. He could have snaked this a little bit closer to the wood line and it would have covered 3 resources. Not really sure why he opted for this. The only thing I can think is this is probably going to be a Burgrave play, so he doesn't really care as much about wood, but even then it's a freebie. And also, arguably, it's better to place it close to the wood line because you would have idled less time walking away from the sheep. A little bit weird to see what he wants to opt for as time goes on. Of course, on the other side, predictable choice as well in the Golden Gate coming out from Ingsoc, and he is going to rush it up with 8 villages. Sorry, man, that's 7. No, 8. Yeah, my count was right. Never question my count. I don't think he's going to go for a boar play, though. I think the boars are just in bad locations. You can see there's no easy path through this area, so you'd have to wrap around the north side. And the south side is similar. Now, you could argue that that would make the resource safe, but the bank logic here is if I pull people for boar, I want a secondary condition here. Is there going to be a vital resource I need? You could argue there's some gold down here, but realistically, what you're probably looking for is the deer follow-up, which is only on the south side. And I don't know, it just feels a lot further away here, especially if you get secluded from your base, especially if you're worried about the potential for a Castle's rush out of the HRE. We'll see if he goes for it. Typically, when people are going for the boar rush, they will put 6 on the Golden Gate, and then they'll pull 2 from the wood line as they walk forward towards the boar. So I'm just expecting this to just be a quick tech up and a hang around. Definitely should be getting on the deer, though. It's just a little bit frustrating, right, for the Roos, because the thing you have to remember is that they don't have the cheap gathering stations. They have to pay 100 wood for the hunting cabin. And it looks like it is going to actually be a pull towards the boar, I hope? There's no way he comes out here for the deer. I mean, you could maybe actually snatch... Ooh, that's interesting. You could actually maybe snatch the HRE player's deer, because it's not close enough that TC can protect again on all these. So yeah, you could essentially hunting cabin drop and wooden fortress drop. It means your opponent only has 1 wood line, and you also take away his better food source. But instead, it looks like he's going deeper. Ingsoc, I believe he might be going in for a tower rush, but Yep, it's very aggressively placed. And Viper's going to try to rush this up quicker, but Torch is going to be out. Ingsoc getting a little bit cheesy here. And Viper, you see, immediately pulls onto the stone to try and get all the defensive upgrades that it will require. Scouts are going to try to contest this clash here. Outpost has to be cancelled. More villagers being pulled in the meantime by Viper. But remember, Ingsoc is playing the roost. He definitely got his hands on the wheelbarrow, so he can outrun. But he cannot outgun. And that's the problem, because the torches are going to come back the other way. It's only fair after what you just done to him. And with this many villagers, I mean, it's an interesting choice. Viper opts to attack the villies instead of trying to touch down the wooden fortress. Logic here is, compared to what just happened to him, 750 HP structure versus a 2k HP structure, his best choice is to do this, and he's doing good work on it right now. It's going to be tight to try and finish this. It depends on the micro, but Ingsoc at the end of the day should end up losing 2 to 3 villagers for it. I think actually, yeah, he lost 3 in the end. Guns are going to be coming out, though, the other way. As Arrow Fire kind of saturates the area, it looks like they will not get a second villager. So a 3-for-2 exchange right now. Not bad for Viper, but he's now blocked off his gold. Worst case scenario, and you can see Ingsoc isn't done just yet. Moving in for another wooden fortress. However, this one might be a bit too ambitious. Outpost should be cancelled out. Viper living in a dream world here if he thinks he get that online. And instead of going for more, Ingsoc decides it's time to go for the gold. Not a bad play, actually. Overall, that came out well for Ingsoc. Better than it probably should have, considering Viper invested twice into outposts. Excuse me. That were just destined to fail. I'm kind of surprised he went for the secondary outpost over here. Realistically, if Ingsoc pulls in to try and drop another wooden fortress, you can overwhelm and kill him. It's only 5 villagers at the stage, so I actually think it would have been more beneficial for Viper to allow that play and then chase him. Of course, one of the big issues for Viper, Ingsoc can just kite him, worst case scenario, right? Because there's no wheelbarrow, but still, just more idle time, more outposts, wood wasted. And he's going to go back for another one again. Logic here is he wants to stop the gold gathering from Ingsoc. You can see the villager pool coming in, but it's a double down on the villies. This will definitely be going up, so Viper, it's not the worst idea now because it essentially means that Ingsoc is floating 5 villagers that are worthless. Nice little shift there, so Viper does take down an additional. Meanwhile, back at base, of course, the first Knights are now hitting the field. Viper will need to get a reaction in place soon. Time is definitely feeling limited for him. Now, keep in mind, Viper got a lot of stones, so he could easily go for a secondary TC on the wood line. I hope that's the goal here. Obviously, you know, you eventually want to get all these arrow slits and placements, right? Because they're so cheap for you, only 37 stone. But he's flown 250. I don't know if this was a mistake originally. I don't think so. I think this was his plan. But the problem is because he didn't rush to get the stone, this one little worker isn't going to do enough on his own. Especially the Knight now showing up. Scout's also proving to be a little bit of a nuisance here. Villagers desperately trying to pillage whatever they can. Needs as much food as possible. Viper, I wonder if he considers just building a marketplace and trading for the gold required for a castle. It could be another way of kind of recovering this situation. But it seems for now, Viper's going to wrap around with the outpost because he knows that Ingsoc is still looking for more value. And this is pretty crafty. Pulling 6 villagers here, these 4 can't contest. However, the danger he just played there is the Knight. The Knight, he doesn't know where he went. Luckily for Viper, it wrapped around the east side, so outpost should go up successfully. See, villagers will also guard off against the scouts. This Villy pool is going to be a big fat L for Ingsoc. In fact, you can see Viper just used it to bait him in again. I love this micro from Viper. He's so snaky, but so effective. And the Horseman now showing up is going to make this a little bit uncomfortable. Viper should still be able to complete, but it's going to come at a price of 1 villager. In fairness, there wasn't room for the 6th villager here anyway. We had a garrison in. Should be targeting the Villies straight away. Instead, he actually goes after the scouts that are diving in towards his base. And Viper... No way. Yeah, he has to wait for arrow slits. He doesn't have range. He's just out of the range he needs. And this looks uncomfortable for Viper. Overall, I think he's fine. I think he's in great position right now. Ingsoc got a little bit too cheeky what he attempted here. He doubled down and didn't really get the value needed. If he got the second win in Fortress, this game feels pretty much set and match for him. But now Viper's counted all his plays. You can see the only option for Ingsoc is to pull back onto the further away, so that hits him in the food department slightly. In the meantime, the only thing now missing for Viper is the gold required to get to castle. And if he doubles down on food or wood, he could easily trade across for what he needs. He's got to make one choice or the other. It actually looks like he snuck to the east side, so no, he won't go for suboptimal trade. He woods himself in, and he gets his hands on the gold. And now Ingsok's play makes no sense. It doesn't actually have any value anymore. And the fact that he's doubling down and going to archery ranges now does not bode well for the Roost player in this situation. Oy, oy, oy. You gotta wonder where he wants to go with this. I mean, setting up the archery ranges, you could argue that this could be a delayed prep or like a jump the gun prep for him going to castle, but he's gone for the blacksmiths already. This is 100% Ingsok all-inning on feudal. Not feeling like he can do anything if the HRE reaches castle, especially considering he damaged himself to get to this state. But I don't know, I'm very worried for what comes next. Love this choice by Viper. I've noticed he does this a lot, by the way, with pretty much any civ he plays. Textiles. I don't know if this is just kind of reactionary feeling of like, you know, the guy from AoE 2 in a game where they always doing it. But it's kind of funny how often we don't see people going for textiles these days. But I actually think it helps Viper a lot. And I think it makes a lot of sense for his playstyle, actually. Viper is a more greedy player, I'd say. It's calculated greed, but it's greed nonetheless. And part of that calculation, why he gets away with it so frequently, is due to textiles. It minimizes his losses. And Ingsok trying to remain competitive. He did finally go for that ball. Little old Pumbaa out here. Meanwhile, Viper is reaching up now with the Regnits. Archers are in position though, so Viper might struggle to get more than one relic to start off this age, but he does at least have one relic secure on the backside where he's been gathering that gold. Horsemen are now hitting the field as well. Prudent counters is what Ingsok is playing with right now. In fact, that's one frustration Ingsok has to address. He doesn't really have a counter in place. He wanted to play prolonged feudal, but he didn't go for spears at all, so his hand is going to be heavily discounted in the coming minute. Looks like Vipe. Where did he send that horseman? Am I blind? Ah, he wrapped him around. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, and the villagers, look how injured they are. I mean, that's freebies. That is actually freebies. That's a great play from Viper. One horseman, and you can possibly kill off 3 villagers. Only gets 2 in the end, but Tower almost finishes what he starts. Good exchange there. Shrinks Ingsok's eco lead, at least in terms of villager count. But remember, it's the HRE you're up against, so you're definitely behind as it stands. Even more so with these relics now being collected. You can see him trying to burn through on the north side, but it's going to take so long with a few knights, it's not even worth the effort. I actually think that one villager can just keep this out indefinitely. By the time you get enough troops to flood through, you're going to be counted in the center, which is why Ingsok needs to focus all resources there. Catches the villagers going out into the deer. Good move there. First knight does hit the field. And this is problematic right now because Viper did run out of food to gather safely underneath the TC, but didn't opt to finish off the berries. A little bit surprised by this. Looks like with the first knight hitting the field, that'll be enough to push his opponent away. Remember, it's only an early knight, so they can't actually clash with the premium knights here. Although they are going to try. So Viper is going to give over a little bit of ground, but not for long before he turns around and takes out the heavy cavalry. Good maneuver here. It means now Ingsok has to retreat back towards his base. This midfield aggression doesn't work anymore. In fact, if he doubles down on it, he's pretty much just playing at a loss. And it looks like Ingsok understands this. He's trying to flirt with the idea of Castle Age, but every time he wants to, he gets forced to replace what was lost. And now, I mean, honestly, I think Ingsok's best choice here is to go Castle Age. It doesn't feel good because you're giving away the relics, but that's a done deal. Viper already got the central relic. You already got the eastern relic. Like, he's at 2 effective already. It'll probably be 3, possibly 4 the next minute or 2. You're not countering that in any way because you've already lost the Night War. And if you're relying on archers to bring you back in that deficit, then you'll never win in this game. So, a little bit surprised that he doubles down on more knights. I mean, spears I at least understand. Spears have some credence here. And Viper, if Viper sniffs out this ball spot for a second, keep in mind that Ingsok has been incredibly greedy. He's now going to fix that. Finally, I'm glad he done this because they could easily wrap around, and I think he's too aware of that. But more idle time, more food gathering missed. Meanwhile, all pressure now relieved from Viper's base. This was played brilliantly well, actually, by Viper. Considering how this began, and this is the thing, right? Like, what Ingsok done was the correct play against the HRE. It's the most popular play, and it can be quite effective with these type of spawns. Because Viper didn't get a great spawn here. His gold was pretty exposed on the flank, yes, but still exposed. He had a forward spawn deer, and he didn't have beneficial wood lines for defense. Like, overall, this was a really, really bad spawn for him. Wait, did he? Wait a second. Is that... I'm wondering if that gate was... Wait. Was it the wrong way around? I mean, the Knight's got in somehow. Ah, the villager chop. Yeah. Okay. I thought he'd actually walled him back in, which would have been so comical here. But yeah, this goal being gone doesn't hurt him now. However, this might. Good maneuver. Ingsoc, he's in. A lot of Knights, so maybe this double down can still pay off. Viper now finding himself much further behind. Actually now up to 16 villagers behind Ingsoc. Keep in mind, Viper continues to escalate the Knight count up to 9 now. He can easily take a fight whenever he chooses. And I am a bit concerned that this is deceitful to Ingsoc. He might be encouraged to continue feudal aggression because of what he just got. I think if he does that, he loses this game. His best opportunity to recover is to now go up, and he needs to go up fast. Knight clash in the center. This is where the numbers are going to start to prove themselves. This is where the deceit is going to start to be revealed to Ingsoc. I mean, the amount of Knights the Viper actually has, he doesn't just have to flirt with fighting anymore. He can outright win there. Also buying a lot of time, just pulling the Knights away. Archers are going to make their way in, and Viper... Oh, what is going on here? Oh no, Viper doesn't realize. He thought he got the wall up in time. Ingsoc is such an annoying son of a goose. I mean, these archers are getting their value. It's all of a sudden looking better and better for Ingsoc. I'm still concerned about the Knight count, but good God, this was a great strike. Now up 21 villagers ahead of the HRE, which offsets any gathering bonus the HRE has. The only thing that's keeping Viper competitive is the relics that he's banked, being about as effective as having an additional 15 villagers here with 3 garrisoned. Oh my God. I mean, it's actually incredible the damage he's done. Yeah, it just feels irrelevant because if you add 15 eco units on, you see Viper's only 6 behind. Then you have to get the HRE buff over. If Ingsoc had achieved this before the relics got gathered, different game. But 3 relics already banked and soon to be 4, it feels like it's still a GG state on its way in favor of Viper. Especially when you see the military numbers are slowly shrinking for Ingsoc and escalating for Viper. And these fights are getting more and more one-sided. Nice peel back by Viper. Offsets any charge damage initially coming in that might give the edge to Ingsoc. Then once the Lancers go away, the clash will commence. And it's a fight that Ingsoc knows instantly he can't take again. And also now, Ing has big issues. He hasn't got enough food. He's got way too much gold. He doubled down on Knights a little bit too long here. It means he now has to go out into desperate territory on the berets, on the deer, to gather the food required. And that's going to give an exploitable opportunity to Viper. You can see he's exploiting everywhere. Knights idling people on the ball. Center Knights are pushing in as well. And farms are now set up, so Viper won't have this same food frustration that Ingsoc is now experiencing. He'll always be safe underneath his TC, which is important when you consider how small Viper's villager count now is. Snake Man has actually just decided to back off again. Interesting choice here. He is giving the opportunity now over to Ingsoc to make his way up. We see that tech up now coming, and it is, of course, going to be the high trade house, a logical choice by Ing, considering the amount of time he spent behind the HRE here. He knows all the relics are basically gone. Bar one. Gotta say, though, this won't be the best high trade house. Realistically, if you could, you place it here. The reason he didn't is it's too risky when you're up against Knights. You don't want to play out your base at all. But overall, I mean, honestly, it's so deceitful, and this is the beauty of the HRE. This is their potency. It really does look like Viper should have been done in this game, but the relics saved him. The relics in conjunction with the Superior heavy cavalry kept him in this game. And now, in a weird way, he's actually thriving. Before anyone was like, well, okay, but what? How is he thriving? That makes no sense. I mean, he's lost so many villagers. Think of all the people. Think of all the families without a father, KB. Okay, but hear me out. Viper has already transitioned farms. When did Ingsoc transition farms? Now, you are the Roos, right? So you get 20% more, but it's not good enough, especially when this happens. He gets cut off. Oh, no. The ball was finished, and so is his villager force here, not able to gather the gold. That's a heavy hit. I mean, honestly, this is the beginning of a downturn, I think. Clash in the center in the meantime. Early Knights have not been upgraded yet. In fact, this delay might cost him in this fight a little bit. Frollock's now arriving, but not healing. Viper, what's going on? Okay, that is an exchange that should not be happening. That is a really good fight for Viper. One that, for Inkstock, rather. One that he actually shouldn't have even got. A bit perplexed by this. Great raids on the flanks, though, from Viper overall. He's shut out the resources, so while this Knight threat is looming, it's not escalating, because Inkstock has no food income anymore. He's got access to barely any deer, any berries either. Clash, meanwhile, underneath the primary TC. And with Sprune and placements coming in, with the heavy injuries on these Knights already, I mean, I don't think Inkstock can actually do as much damage as you think here. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about. He's going to chip away a few more villages. But 1 or 2 Knights will clean this up. And afterwards, the big question mark looms. What does Inkstock have back at home? A few archers and maybe 2 Knights. And Viper, you know, although he didn't have his Knights in position to defend his main base when this raid came in, they were paying for themselves on the flanks. It's not easy to actually play flanks like this either. Like, I want to give a lot of credit to what Viper done in this game, because essentially, usually what happens in Alzai is both sides wall the flanks and neither one can actually gain any ground. But because Inkstock was playing with a lot of aggression in the way that he exploited economy, right? Shutting out part of Viper's base, moving out into the ball, etc., he wasn't walling himself. These walls came a lot later in the game. And this is one of the big crippling issues of playing with momentum. When that momentum cuts, when your legs get cut out from underneath you, you have to go back and fix all these errors. And it was a brilliant move by Viper to identify that the flanks were going to be vulnerable like this. I mean, you can see he was able to take out 8 villages over here. Western flank wasn't even walled, which means that Inkstock can't get the reserve food. And it means that he now has to make a farm transition while being dove in his own base by heavily armored Knights. Keep in mind that Inkstock cannot keep up production like this. Not at the rate that Viper can. A few of the extras are just going to be able to sliver their way through. Idle up a lot of eco, shut things down. The butchering has finished in the base, and Inkstock does come out ahead, but there is concern what's coming next. Viper already has 6 more Knights in the field, while this is the entirety of Inkstock's army. Problematic. Especially considering that he's just baited the remaining Knights to the backside where... Oh, no! Okay, this is the worst case scenario. I don't think Inkstock even realized it. He's going to chase this 1 Knight away. The second wave's going to come in and be stronger than his. And his villages are actually getting very exposed now. The wood lines are not in a safe position anymore. He's had to place wooden palisades plus wooden fortresses everywhere. That's a heavy amount of wood investment. Meanwhile, back at home, like, Viper hasn't actually full walled himself at all, right? He built these tiny walls, and that was literally it. He's been fine since that. And now, once again, it just feels like he's thriving. I mean, there's only a 3 villager difference. No. I don't think I emphasized that enough. There is a 3 villager difference between Viper and Inkstock. Once upon a time, it was a 20+ lead for Inkstock. And now, Inkstock's going to be left in the dust because Viper is setting up the Love Hotel. Palace of Swabia on the way. Once Imp hits, I don't actually see any way that Inkstock can turn this game. It's already looking impossible for him to apply pressure. The villages you sniped in the last 2 to 3 minutes have not been impressive. So if you keep that pace and your opponent now has 4 TC effective, how do you actually win this? Maybe Sacred Sites? Okay, he doesn't like that idea. GG's going to get called. Inkstock, great aggression early on. An interesting idea around the Wooden Fortresses almost pays off, but Viper, despite a huge deficit, holds strong and shows you the HRE power.